Hey gang, Uncle Todd here, and we're about to go into a movie few venture into and few would want to. This is probably the nadir of the short-lived blaxploitation horror hybrid, Blackenstein, also known as the Black Frankenstein. Yeah. There's not really a lot to tell about it. It's a very low budget film, and the only really name actor in it is John Hart, who prolific character actor from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. He's best known for the 2 seasons on The Lone Ranger, where he replaced Clayton Moore due to a salary dispute. But even though wearing a mask and possessed of a good voice, fans preferred Moore, and he was reinstated for the rest of that show's run. But Hart has made appearances on TV as the Lone Ranger later on in his career. There was an episode of Greatest American Hero where he played himself, in which the main character of that show was a big fan of his from The Lone Ranger, and he gives him some advice. And then there is an episode of Happy Days where Hart showed up as the Lone Ranger to give a pep talk to Fonzie. And I mainly know him from his serials he did for Columbia. He had 2 starring roles, Jack Armstrong, the All-American Boy, in which, although I think he was in his 30s at the time, I guess he's teenage-ish, college age at least, maybe. And The Adventures of Captain Africa, in which it was basically supposed to be a sequel to Columbia's The Phantom, but after they found out they had lost the rights to the character, it expired, being a low-budget serial production, they just changed some of the outfit and renamed it and used as much footage from the original serial as they could in the mostly the long shots for the action sequences, and threw some scenes from other serials in to kind of pad the whole thing out. He also played henchmen in serials like Batman and Robin, Black Hawk, and I'm trying to think of another one. Oh, it doesn't matter. He plays Dr. Stein, a Nobel-winning medical doctor for his mapping the DNA strand. And we were introduced to him in his LA estate. Those sharp-eyed viewers of you would be correct. The props in that lab are the Kenneth Strickfaden electrical effects from the original Universal Frankenstein films. I think they were used up until today. They're still being used. I could be wrong on that, but they were used for decades. And he's basically working on limb transplants. Never get this mic stick. He's basically working on limb transplants. And he's visited by one of his former students, Winifred, who is a doctor herself now. And he takes her on a little tour to show her his patients. Let's see. First, get off my notes. Taz. Oh, jeez. Forgot to write it down. No, it's in here. I know. Eleanor, who is 90 years old, but thanks to his daily injections of DNA formula.
Through my experience with the genetic code DNA, I have a formula that's brought her from approximately 90 years of age to what you see before you.
The results are incredible.
Next, he shows her Bruno, who's had a leg replacement. Actually, two. One with the DNA is healing fabulously. The other, in which he was using an RNA formula, which, when perfected, would allow the person to not have to have daily injections of DNA. But it's not perfected, which has led to some minor problems.
Now, Winifred. That's the result of an unsolved RNA injection. Sort of part of the primeval theory, a kind of throwback to the jungle. I'm currently working on the RNA formula. I'm hoping to bolster and supplant the DNA, possibly replace it.
That is Malcolm, Dr. Stein's assistant / butler / cook / whatever. He'll become important later. The reason for Winifred's visit is she has a fiance, Eddie. He is in the VA right now. While in Viet Nam, he stepped on a landmine and lost all 4 limbs. She's hoping Dr. Stein, with his new research, can help him. Dr. Stein thinks he can. And they head to go talk to Eddie. And Eddie is not having a good time of it at the VA.
You look like a creep, laying there looking up at me with those stupid eyes of yours. The hell do you know? Close those eyes. It's time for your shot, buddy. Nice big needle. Just relax.
Yes, it seems the orderly there has some resentment towards Eddie because Eddie went over to Vietnam to fight for his country. This guy wanted to, but because of his heart, he was declared 4F, and there's some resentment there. That'll become important later. Right now, Dr. Stein and Winifred, they visit Eddie and explain they think they can help him. Eddie's not too sure, but Winifred convinces him to be transferred to Dr. Stein's place. Unfortunately, while they're preparing Eddie for the operations, Malcolm picks this time to make a confession to Winifred.
I've fallen in love with you.
Malcolm, you have been very kind to me, and I appreciate it. And I do like you. It would be hard not to. But you must realize I love Eddie. And as soon as he's well, we're going to be married. I hope you understand this doesn't affect our friendship.
All right, Winifred.
I did not like the way he said that. After the operations, and they need to start Eddie on his DNA injections, we learn why Malcolm said it that way.
Primeval theory. Throwback. 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 Jungle. 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 Prehistoric. Prehistoric. Prehistoric.
Yeah, Malcolm didn't take too well to being put in the friend zone and is going that standard route of, well, if I can't have you, neither can he. As the weeks progress with the daily injections of RNA instead of DNA, at first, Eddie seems to be doing fine. And then, not so much.
Dr. Stein, look at this.
Find Malcolm. Prepare the room next to the lab. Tell him to get here with a gurney. We have to work fast.
And it is at this point the flick starts to go downhill fast. Because in his basement laboratory, he just happens to have a dungeon off to the side.
We'll increase the injections by 50 cc's.
Does that come standard in California real estate, or do you have to order that special? Anyway, the extra dosage causes his deterioration to increase, and then inexplicably his hair mutates into a square shape, and they dress him in some Herman Munster cast-offs with some disco boots. Gotta go with the look, I guess. But that gate's not very strong, because Eddie escapes and makes his way back to the VA for a little payback. Yeah, he actually rips the guy's arm off. But we don't need to know about that. That might become important later, but then on his way home, back to the castle / hospital / estate, whatever it is, he disturbs a dog, which causes the owners to see what's going on. Eddie gets back to the castle, and no one seems to be the wiser. The next night he escapes again, and while walking through the park, which is nearby, a couple on a date stop in the moonlight, and when the guy gets too frisky, the girl storms off to make her way home. And can you guess what happens next? The next morning, 2 officers come to talk to Dr. Stein. This is the 4th murder. The previous night, there was the hospital orderly, a woman and her boyfriend, and possibly dog. Not sure. The boyfriend was done off screen. And this new one was in the park, which just happens to be near the doctor's sanitarium, and there's not really much else in that area. But, and there is that connection with the hospital orderly, and they had one of the patients being transferred. But considering Eddie was a paraplegic, Bruno was missing his legs, and Eleanor's 90, there doesn't seem to be any real connection to the place, but they want to be thorough. Stein, not thinking Eddie could possibly have done this, he's locked up in the basement. Tells him he can't really help, and they accept that. Now, Dr. Stein, to be on the safe side, does put Eddie in chains, but it really doesn't help because the regenerative mutation is increasing his strength all the time. And now we come to the, for me, highlight of the film. Now, over the opening credits, Cardilla DeMilo sang a song called I Can't Find No One to Love Me, a really good R&B love ballad. It was played again over the scenes of Eddie being transferred to the estate. And here we cut to a nightclub where, after a comedian tells a okay joke, we get Ms. DeMilo in person doing a live performance of the song. Awesome. Which I can't play for you here. Copyrights and all that. But after the song, Eddie comes upon a couple making out in the alley behind the nightclub and kills the man and then turns his eyes to the woman. Yeah, I couldn't show much of that. Her top was popped, as they say. But this does lead to one of the more amusing scenes when there are witnesses seeing Eddie leaving. The officers we had seen earlier come upon the scene, and we learn that one of them is Officer Basil Exposition, apparently.
I saw him, officers. He was about 9 feet tall. He looked like he was hurt. Oh yeah, he went that way.
The only thing down that way is the cemetery and the abandoned factory.
The only thing next to that is the mansion, Dr. Stein's mansion.
Dr. Stein, let's check it out. Good idea.
Did you get all that? Good. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Malcolm's decided he's waited long enough and decides to just, well, you know. Malcolm gets his just desserts, as they say. Fortunately, Malcolm isn't the only one Eddie decides to take apart. Eddie makes his way down to the lab where he finds he can't actually attack Winifred. But he does hoist Dr. Stein on his own petard. Now, Eddie leaves, and then the police show up. Because police are always effective in these movies. And then we get some scenes that's only purpose is to stretch this film out to feature length. Because Eddie comes upon a woman going out of her house and getting in her car, and he grabs her. Where is this at? I got no clue. They just said there's not much up there. So where did she come from? Is she part of the household staff nobody knew about? Don't know. But he doesn't kill her. He takes her to the abandoned factory that was mentioned. Or was it a warehouse? Heck, I just heard a little bit ago and I don't even remember. But she wakes up, gets away, and we get a prolonged and rather unexciting chase, considering he moves even slower than Lon Chaney's mummy did back in the 40s. But eventually he catches her and kills her. And then, in an ending that I don't even know how they came up with this, the police just suddenly show up and release a couple of dogs. Apparently they tear them apart, but all I'm seeing is this. Yeah, they just kind of stand over and bark. But just to make sure we understand, they have this little grisly bit of... From how low budget this film was, I'm betting that was the exact same fake arm they used earlier when Eddie tore it off the hospital attendant. And the film ends with Winifred being escorted out of the house by one of the two police officers with an implication they may down the road. Who knows? But right now she's in mourning for lost friends and enemies too. Yeah. This movie's a mess. There are some actually really grisly scenes in it. The first woman he attacks, they show him pulling out her insides. And okay, I'm pretty sure this is just some butcher shop sausage, but it's pretty nasty. And then, of course, when the dogs rip him open, they show, the whole thing there, and it's just bleh. But yeah, I do not understand the whole thing of making him look like a knockoff Herman Munster, for a better thing. He's no Karloff, tell you that right now. But I mean, the outfit. Hammer made tons of Frankenstein movies, and the monsters in those never looked like the Universal. They were their own things, and they really should have done that here. I think it would have worked better, because the visuals destroy any kind of pathos or build up of plot that came in the first half. And the first half is slow, with the operations and the whole love triangle thing. And then the second half is all the attacks. And if he just didn't look made up to call back to the Universal films, this would have been a lot better. As is, it is just awful. And if we're going to be a stickler, the doctor here, Stein, is not black. And Frankenstein always referred to the doctor. Creation was the Frankenstein monster. So Blackenstein and Black Frankenstein do not work. This is one of the films from this time era that really lives down to the cringy name it was given. Not like Blacula, which is a great film, helped by William Marshall as the title character. Now, assuming the title character is the monster, this person is no actor. I'm not even going to bother looking at his name. Now, I had thought originally he was like a football player or something, given his size. And, people like Rosie Greer and other athletes had taken on roles like this. Rosie Greer had been in the Thing with Two Heads, I believe it was. Yeah, Thing with Two Heads. There's the Great Two-Headed Transplant and the Thing with Two Heads. He was in the Thing with Two Heads. And, in Hammer films, they would sometimes hire bodybuilders to, like David Prowse, to play a monster. But according to IMDb, John Hart said that the producer was a criminal lawyer wanting to get into film, and that the person playing Eddie was one of his former clients. And in trying to look him up online, I can't find anything except that he was in this movie. Yeah. That square cut head, it just irritates me so much. A square cut afro. What in the world were they thinking? I've got not much more to say about this. There's really not much to say. Please hit like, share, subscribe, and stay after the credits for my favorite scene.
I was out in the alley, taking a smoke like I normally do. I heard this broad scream. I took another puff. When I looked up, there was a 15-foot shadow in front of me. You want me to explain that?
Well, what happened after you saw the shadow?
What happened? Man, I got the hell out of there.